Live.
What's up? Oh, that was kind of a weak clap. God, my clap's not working today. What's up, I guess I'm sitting down. You know, I'm not usually sitting down, so that threw me off a little bit. Welcome to the Mortgage Coach Friday Mastermind. You like that, Kristin? Oh, I caught her drinking now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Welcome Facebook Live. So every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, I'm interviewing someone amazing, and every Friday, we're having this group mastermind. And today it's just Kristin and I, so it's almost like the Tuesday call. Like I'm interviewing someone, Austin. Kristin Messerli, what's up?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for making time to bring your leadership and bring your voice and bring your ideas into the mortgage coach community. So guys, I built this call and I promoted it with the headline on lots of millennials don't trust lenders. Come here and we'll talk about strategies, principles, and concepts to connect and to earn trust so that you can serve them. And we're definitely going to do everything in that context. We're going to deliver on that promise. But I think there's a bigger story to be had today, just because I think there's a bigger opportunity in the market. And I'm gonna start this by just breaking down what I think is happening. So one thing we know that's happening for sure is that over the past week to 2 weeks, we've seen the lowest rates of our careers. Whether you've been in the business for 10 years or 33 years, we've never seen interest rates like this. Yesterday, there were 28 midday rate changes. So if you are in the Mortgage Coach Facebook group, that's never happened. I mean, I've never seen it happen. I asked Dan Rawich, who is our, community economist and visionary, and he's like, Dave, I've never seen anything like this. It's the first time in history, it's history that's happening. From a mortgage standpoint, we've never seen lower rates, but yet families have never had more equity. So everybody is in this better position with more equity. Also, Americans have never had more consumer debt. And, for the millennial population, that means they've never had more student debt. For everybody, they've never had more consumer debt. So we're in this really unique place where there's, unique opportunity, low rates, lots of equity, and then we also have risk. We've got consumer debt, and then as a population, we have a virus named after a beer, coronavirus. And, up until a week ago, I was kind of like, oh, the coronavirus, cheers, with the Corona beer in my hand. I'm going to wash my hands more, and I'm going to be more thoughtful personally, professionally, and as a husband and father. But given, NBA has been canceled, college lacrosse has been canceled, kind of into that. Syracuse was undefeated and ranked the #1 team in America, where my son's going. And so I'm like, I thought like when they canceled the season, that was going to be like my biggest concern. And I was just like, that's not even close to my biggest concern. So we're in this super interesting place in the world and in the mortgage business. So I'm going to say one more thought, and then I'm going to bring Kristin in. And then here's another thing. I was talking to a friend of mine and a top producer in our community, and he was like, us in the mortgage industry, we're in really this super unique position because while there are a lot of heroes, the health industry, anybody that is in the health industry, like you are a first responder, just like, the police, the fire, thank you for your service. So they're in this, the front line of the war that's taking place. But, as a mortgage industry, we've got a lot of good to bring. Like we can reduce people's cost of debt. People are still buying homes. We have a healthy purchase market. It still makes sense, well, who knows how this all plays out over the next couple weeks to couple months. Real estate and buying a home has never been better. It's never been cheaper. And so all this awesomeness is happening, and we are the purveyors. We are the leaders to bring lower cost, become wealth, create wealth faster. I think one of the most important things we can do as leaders for all the people that have low rates and they can refinance is not just to help them cut their monthly payment and save $100 to $300. It's like, hey, how can I turn that into being debt-free faster? How can I turn that into creating lifetime wealth, generational wealth for my family faster? So there's just this bigger opportunity of leadership. So edit I don't know what the headline of the call is going to be when we promote this in a recording, but I think it's going to be bigger than how to influence and win with millennials. I think it's going to be a bigger headline. So I asked Kristin to be on this call because she has been studying this. Kristin, how long have you been on stages in the mortgage business and been this kind of millennial leader?
Yeah, I've been doing this in mortgage for 6 years.
Yeah, so for 6 years you've been on stages. I was originally introduced to you by Mitch Kiter, one of the most respected leaders in our mortgage industry I know. And when he introduced me, he's like, Dave, you need to know this girl. She is the future leadership of mortgage business. And he said other things, I can't remember what it was, but I just remember going, wow, I need to know this girl. And since then, I think we've become personal friends and we've created some incredible content. And I do believe this is going to be the best content we've ever created. So let's talk about the article you just wrote. What's the headline and why did you write it? And then I'm going to interview you on it and we're going to bring some leadership.
Awesome. Well, I am very excited to be talking about this because it does draw on my experience even before I got into this space. The title of this is called, of the article I wrote was Millennials Don't Trust Lenders or the Housing Market, so how do we reach them? And then the subtitle is a social work inspired approach to guiding first-time homebuyers. And so I share that because that was really the reason I wrote the article. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I mean, even since I first started getting into the mortgage business was because I previously was a social worker and I worked primarily in immigrant communities and with young homeless populations, but a lot of traumatized populations. And we used a model that's very common across any kind of social work or psychology, space, but it's called trauma-informed care. And in trauma-informed care, it's, a way to, you have a few principles when thinking about how to provide care to a traumatized population. And I realized that the populations that we're working to reach, millennials and underserved segments, are responding to financial services and even just general institutions with a kind of similar behavior to some of the traumatized populations I worked with. They have this fight or flight response where they tend to be either overly cautious or overly reckless with their finances or the way that they work. And I'm going to pause real quick because you are frozen, Dave. Can you still hear me? Oh.
So Kristin, two things. Yeah. One, I was just doing that so I could get my computer up. And I also didn't want to, interrupt you. Someone did ask, where can we find the article? So if you're listening to the recording, it'll be in the link. Like if you're watching this in YouTube or Facebook, there'll be a comment down below. And if you're watching this live right now, the link is in the comments wherever this is being broadcast. And I saw that Kristin also posted it down below. So keep the questions coming. This is a mastermind. We will literally stop talking and answer your question. We have plenty of time to do that. So keep the questions coming, but now you know how to get the article. Kristin.
Cool. Thanks. As I was saying, I think, for millennials who entered adulthood during the financial crisis or immediately following, our lens towards the housing industry is one of fear. And I think that, that really changes how we're viewing financial services and housing. And there's a study by Even Financial that showed that 92% of millennials say they don't trust banks. And over half have no one to turn to for financial advice. And then if you think about communities of color, where 46% of millennials identify as ethnic minorities, they have a huge history of systemic discrimination, and we're still, getting blatantly discriminated for mortgages through the 90s. So, there's a lot of distrust when it comes to financial institutions, housing, and the whole industry. And so, I've been thinking about this for a while, and then recently I started thinking about how we apply this model. And so if you're cool with this, or if you want me to pause for a second, but I think I'd like to share what that model looks like and the five principles to the trauma-informed care approach, and then we could talk about what that really means from a mortgage industry perspective.
Yeah, so I definitely want you to do that. A couple of things I want everybody thinking about this right now is that this really does not apply to just millennials. I mean, I don't care who you are in the world right now. There is fear. Like we're having negative thoughts. We have fear. So, depending on where you're at from an emotional IQ level, you could be anywhere from full on lizard brain, fight or flight fear, or you are at some level of that where you're having to really intentionally manage it. Like myself, I feel like I have a high emotional IQ, but I've got to be very intentional about what input I'm bringing in, got to stay informed. So this applies to everybody, guys. Like, listen to her, because I've read this article multiple times. In preparation for this call, I was just thinking about how this is just so powerful for where we're at in just the world today, for move-up buyers, first-time home buyers, as parents, as spouses. So rock it out. Walk us through your principles. And then remember, guys, put questions and comments down below, and we'll get them all unpacked for you.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. So we start with the first principle in the trauma-informed care approach model is safety. And so safety can mean a lot of different things for different people, but in this context, we're thinking about how does someone feel safe when they're interacting with you or with the whole mortgage process. And one of the things that I think I use this example in the article, that you may have millennials who honestly don't feel safe reaching out to a loan officer they don't know or having that conversation immediately, because they don't feel like they understand the process and they're going to get sold to. And that's why it's really important that you are creating a brand, as we've talked about a million times, but about as a trusted advisor, and you become known in the community and through multiple all the communities available as someone who you can have a safe conversation with this person. And for I even advocate for giving like a mortgage coach scenario or total cost analysis to someone early on, so that they can have a sense of personal empowerment and safety before having those conversations.
So before we go and unpack them all, I wanna just translate some of these things into like tactics. Okay, what does that mean to me as a mortgage professional? Now, I do think, I had a conversation with Josh Metal today, someone that was on last Friday's interview. We unpacked a lot of pro tips, on how to do refis, but he's someone I really respect. And one of the things that Josh and I are probably gonna do a call on it, but first of all, he's got himself into a place where, as a leader, as a husband, as a father, as a mortgage professional, he knows what safety means to him. And I'm not gonna share all that means to him, because I think it's personal to him, but I would just tell you, he is in a really good, healthy spot, and he's doing all the right things so he could show up. So part of bringing safety to a first-time home buyer, you have to be that person. Like, if you have too much debt, if you don't have cash reserves yourself, if you have commission breath, guys, we could give you the script, we could give you the tactics, we could tell you the strategies, but it's not going to be as effective as if you are in this place of personal safety. And I think as a mortgage professional, we're going to make a lot of money, even if you're not a top producer. It's raining loans, and the opportunity is to save money, build cash reserves on a personal level, and be that person that's bringing safety to the families you serve. So one, I want you to make a personal note on that. Community down below, if you could, what are you doing? Like, what are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing on a personal level to bring more safety into your own personal life, so that you can show up as that leader to the families that you serve? Okay, one more thing, and then we'll do the next one, Kristin. I think, how do we take that safety, that concept, that learning, which I believe to be true? Like, I read your book, or not your book, your article, and I'm like, this is true. I believe this. Okay, so how do I need to show up in my consultation with a family? And a couple things that I would recommend to everybody in this call is we always talk about cash reserves as, you know, from an app standpoint, like, hey, we need this much cash reserves to qualify. I think we need to go beyond that. Like, I think, you know, Dave Ramsey recommends 3 to 6 months of this emergency fund. And whether you are like the worrier, I need it for emergency, or whether you're the opportunistic, I need it for opportunity, like, let's be the light, let's be the professional. And we don't want to bring it into the conversation in a way that we're shaming people, because let's face it, the majority of the customers that we talk about that are buying homes and are refinancing, they are not gonna have 3 to 6 months. And you shouldn't be like, I don't think we need to be like, you should. I just think we need to at least talk about it, because it's now we're bringing things that will bring safety to that family. The other thing that we need to do, and this plays into the wheelhouse of the mortgage coach community, is we need to start talking about the total. Every time you get into debt or you're thinking about getting into debt, look at the cost of that debt over time. Because it's one thing to say, like, I can afford this monthly payment, I can afford this cash to close, but it's another thing when you like, I know the cost of this debt and other debts over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We start to look at the cash over time. One, that's how wise decisions are made. And two, it brings a sense of safety to people. So anyways, I just gave you a couple ideas, some self-work, and then some strategic strategy. Like, it's never been more important to have the total cost conversation with a family, or you're not playing this game. If you are not doing that, then you are not implementing this principle. So one last thing, community, those are 2 of my ideas. Down below, whether you're watching the recording or live, what are you doing to create a sense of safety for the families that you serve? Let us know. Kristin, anything you want to add on that before you give us the next principle?
Yeah, because I think this one is just, I really want to sit on this for a second, because I think the safety piece is really important to understand from the lens of your customer, wherever they're coming from. I mean, for millennials, you know, as we're entering adulthood, as we were really starting to lay our foundation, it wasn't a strong foundation. You know, I mean, we entered during a recession, and not to say that all of those things, you know, everyone had their lens that they're looking through, but I think one of the things I wrote about actually recently was that the family has changed a lot over the years. You know, I mean, in the 50s and 60s, when a lot of the housing stock was built, it was very much about this, like, you know, core nuclear family. And now a lot of millennials are postponing having family, or are living in a more remote kind of lifestyle, and they really want and need more community connection. And so, you know, even just thinking about it from a standpoint of like, how do you provide safety in the type of home that, you know, I mean, that's not from a loan officer's perspective, obviously, but as you're working with your partners and thinking this through, I think that's important to keep in mind. Like, what is the core need for this buyer? And then, again, thinking bigger than just the mortgage transaction, as you were talking about, being that financial advisor is so important, so that people understand that you're not just in this for the, you know, a quick sale. You're in this to be a support through the biggest financial decision of their lives, and something that's going to help them in the long run. So that, I think that is really critical, what you talked about, you know, overall financial wellness.
Cool. So remember, guys, anything you're doing personally or anything you're doing in your sales conversation to create a sense of safety, put it down below. And you just gave me another idea. I think this article is so good that you may want to schedule some time to go over it with your realtor partners. And, you know, because it is just very on point. We all know that we're in this crazy world of chaos that's both scary and opportunistic if you're in the mortgage and real estate business. So this may be, you know, just a great lunch and learn with 4 or 5 realtors, or this may be a great lunch conversation with agents. Because you know, here's the deal. I love Kristin's backstory, you know, and this is not something I've ever heard anybody talk about in mortgage and real estate. And so I think it's a new idea. It's taking a concept from outside of our space and bringing it into our space. So Kristin, anything else on security before we get it, or safety, before we get into the next principle?
Yeah, so I really do want to expand on this a little bit more and come up with some really practical stuff. So yeah, just to reiterate, if anyone has any thoughts, but to think more than, like, my thought on safety and setting that stage for the consumer to feel safe in the transaction is more than just that initial conversation. Like, when they're reaching out to you or responding to you, that means they already feel safe. So in that process, I think it's important to of course sit down, have the conversation about, here's what your path to home ownership looks like, here's what this process looks like, here's what it's like to work with me. That's setting a stage of safety. But also even thinking about, like, someone may not feel safe as safe if you are calling them, right away rather than texting to get to the phone call, or, some of those communication tactics can be different for different people. And so you might think about that. But even before all of that, like, how you get involved in the community, partnering up with young professional organizations or co-working spaces, or places where you can provide some financial advice or financial wellness, home path to home ownership type of stuff that allows you to build that brand as, I'm a safe connection. And so I would like to, think a little bit bigger than just once you get the customer, like, how do you set the stage for getting that customer as well?
You bring up a good point. You bring up a good point, because I was just focusing, okay, like, how do we use it to earn their trust to win their business? And then to her point, there's like, okay, what do we do during the process? How are we leveraging this concept in process? And then, here's the beautiful thing. How do we do it post-transaction so that we become that lender for the next 40 to 50 years? Because if we really play this well, we do that. And that does bring up a cool concept. It's a video that's trending in the mortgage coach community. And it's Jeremy Forcier's recent interview from the site visit I did with him. But he's got a very unique way in which he's asking for referrals for people that are in process. So I'll save that for later in the call. I'll make sure I put a link to that down below. But it's like, if you do it right, if you play this well, you're also going to get a lot more referrals, and you're going to make a lot more money. So it's not just like the right thing to do. It's not only a advantage to win the deal. It could be a referral multiplier. Like I really think if you took the concepts of this article and you applied them, you could improve your conversion by 10%, and you could improve your referrals by like 3x, like 300%. Okay, keep it going, Kristin. This is awesome.
So, so one more thing, with this whole model, with these principles that, again, everyone uses with, like, the traumatized populations. These populations are people that are really, hit or miss. Like, they'll come in and talk to you for a second and then be like, no, I'm freaked out. And there's always this push and pull kind of conversation. It's really, you're winning them over. My whole experience as a social worker was like, how do I build trust with this person that does not trust anyone anymore because of these awful things or whatever. So I think it really fits well with a population where we're just trying to build trust here. And when you do build trust, as Dave was saying, that is the time when you stand out amongst everyone else. Most of the people that I interview that are millennials that are thinking about buying a home or recently bought a home say that they just didn't know anyone in the industry. And again, back to that 92% of millennials say that they don't trust banks. Like, you have an opportunity to stand out in the midst of just a kind of dark industry for a lot of millennials. And so by building that trust, like Dave said, I think that's just a big opportunity for a lot of referrals. So anyway, so I'll move into the second one, which is transparency. And that's the second principle of the trauma-informed care model. And again, it's so interesting. When I looked at this, I immediately thought of mortgage coach. Like, when I was looking back at all 5 principles, they're just so consistent with the mortgage coach message. But transparency means, of course, setting clear expectations about what the home buying process is going to look like and how they're going to be communicated with, and then offering additional resources for education. This is where the total cost analysis is obviously very fitting, and I think everyone should be creating a homeownership plan for your customers, and making it comfortable so that someone, like, you know, we've talked about this a lot, Dave, where there's been this huge shift towards consumers wanting to have control over the transaction. They want to feel like, you know, I'm at the center of the transaction. I want the information to make smart and confident decisions for myself. And so that's where transparent information really empowers me to be able to do that. And I think, you know, we need to do what we can to make it more clear and make it more accessible, because so many people feel like they're worried that they're not going to qualify. They're worried that they are, you know, going to get sold to. And if you can provide them with transparent information that I know I can clearly see for myself, I'm going to feel so much more comfortable. And if you say, you know, we create a homeownership plan for everyone, whether that's now or in 2 years, that it works for you, then I know that I'm in safe hands here. You know, kind of all of these build on each other and overlap. But anyway, what are your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think at this point with Mortgage Coach, a transparency advocate and change agent in the mortgage industry. While a lot of people look at Mortgage Coach and they're like, oh, that's that sales advantage, a way to, you know, get people to go from price to advice. But what I learned when I invented the total cost analysis 22 years, and transparency was not a word that we used 22 years ago. It wasn't like, oh, transparency, but to me, it was two things. One, it was an uncommon level of insight that people had never looked at. So like, I got people to go like, I've always thought of a mortgage as rate, payment, closing cost, and oh, wow, that makes a lot of just common sense to look at it over time. And so I'm going to show my screen real quick, because I think this is one of those things I really want to help you grasp, that with the science and art of Mortgage Coach is that we're taking personality and empathy and we're letting you broadcast that. That's why we have a video feature built into it. Now, for people that are dyslexic and ADD like me, I also do video because I can't spell, and I've never misspelled a word in a video. And it's a faster and easier way for me to communicate. So it amplifies a challenge I have. Some people would say a disadvantage. I say an advantage. But here's what it's also doing. You're giving people the transparency of options. So every mortgage professional, if you want to turn transparency into a competitive advantage, you need to give families options, period. You are not delivering full transparency if they're not getting options. And then you need to give them transparency of comparing those options over time. You know, that's the other thing. Like, you want to help people be more safe. Always analyze debt over time. So if they have credit card debt, and remember, the world, America has more credit card debt than ever. They have more consumer debt than ever. So let's evaluate that debt over time and do it over 2 periods of time. You always want to be like, family, what are your hopes, your dreams, and your goals? You're writing those down. And so this number right here should be one of their interim goals. Like, if they're a first-time home buyer that has MI, it'd be like, oh, when can we have your MI paid off, and what's our strategy to pay off that MI? And let's say their next goal is, I want to have MI paid off in 2 years, and I want to buy a bigger home in 7 years. So this would be, you know, 24 months, and this would be 84 months. So Mortgage Coach, when you buy it, it comes with a default of 5 years and 15 years. And people always, you know, one, I want to make sure you guys know that you can default those times. So if you specialize in millennials, you might want to make the default 2 years and 7 years. If you specialize in people that, you know, are move-up buyers, and usually they want to have their home paid off in 15 years. So you could default it whatever you want, but this is just one example of transparency. Again, another example of transparency is online reviews, because now you're giving families the ability to see what other people said about you. And that's one of the reasons why online reviews are more important, is because we have Google now. We can find anything we want on Google. So make sure when you get Googled, you show up the way you want. Make sure that when you're delivering mortgage options, it's options and it's over time. And guys, make sure your online reviews are just super tight. And for those of you that were wondering, like, what's that? That's our social survey integration. So the most recent 5-star integration or review shows up in the Mortgage Coach TCA. So I really want you to think of the Mortgage Coach total cost analysis is the ultimate way to present rates, fees, and options to a family in a way that creates safety, because they look at things long-term, and in a way that creates transparency, because now they have most loan officers aren't giving this. They know more, they have more transparency. Kristin.
Yeah, and while we're on that, I mean, I'll just say what the rest of these principles are. I think Mortgage Coach is all of these. It probably, I think, the best way to provide all of this. But 1 is safety, 2, transparency, 3, choice, clearly providing options here, 4, collaboration, you're collaborating, bringing the consumer into this, and then empowerment, and the consumer obviously feels very empowered. And one thing that you brought up around, of course, reviews make the customer feel safe, and that's transparent. But the video part, I've been talking about how much video really provides a sense of trust and connection with the borrower. But I think that, I want to expand on that a little bit. When we look at someone eye to eye, our brains we produce a hormone called oxytocin, which is a connecting, kind of a bonding hormone. And so if you provide a video, you're going to naturally build more trust with the consumer and build more of a sense of safety. I think that is a really important part of this, because remember that the consumer is pretty stressed out when they're thinking about this. They may be really excited, but anything financial is stressful for most people. And again, if there's this huge level of distrust with your borrowers, then that's expanded so much. And so for a normal, even I will look at, so if I get something like this, it can be displayed in the most beautiful way, and it's still like, oh gosh, you feel this sense of a little bit of anxiety. And so if you add a video and you're like, let me walk through this with you, and you're my guide through that, then I feel so safe. It's like this feeling of, okay, yeah, I can do this. We can do this. I know what's going on. And this guy is like, is guiding me through this. And so I really want to emphasize how important I think that video component is to provide, wrapping this all together.
I love that. But let's, I know you just unpacked all the 5 principles, but I love how we're going through it.
Yeah, I want to go.
And it does. I want to make sure, while I will advocate for Mortgage Coach, and truly not because I am the CEO and founder of Mortgage Coach. I mean, I obviously have a horse in the race here, but I also want to advocate for other tools that you should use and why they work. So I'm going to start expanding that on other technologies and other tools. Kristin did a nice job of just something as simple as text. If you're communicating with a family through the wrong channel for that family, or it's the wrong channel at the wrong time, it breaks down this whole platform and this whole framework. So when you use text and how you use text, when you use Facebook and how you use Facebook, when you use email and how you use voicemail, when you use phone and how you use phone. All of these things are more important than ever. And the one last piece before we move off this from a channel perspective, you're now seeing, especially for everybody that uses an iPhone and an Apple, they're making it easier than ever for us to use audio notes. So we can just click a button and record an audio. We can click the camera and record a video. So it's never been easy for us to use this multi-channel way to communicate. And all of these things are just as important when it comes to building trust and value. And one last statement, and let's see your next principle. My goal for Mortgage Coach in the community that we have is that the people that invest in our platform, I want you to have an unfair advantage because you are the most valuable loan officer in America. Like we brag a lot that 32, 34% of the top 1% use Mortgage Coach. But here's the deal. Everybody that gives a family a total cost analysis, you are the most valuable loan officer for that family. I don't care what your rate is, whatever channel you're in, how competitive your rates are. Josh Meadows said something that you guys should all write this down. the best mortgage strategy always trumps rate. Mortgage strategy trumps rate. And so write that down. By the way, start using that in your sales conversation, because we need to educate people that the best mortgage strategy is better and more important to your financial future, your safety, than getting the lowest rate right now. You're going to get the lowest rate. I'm going to get you a great rate, but mortgage strategy is more important. So, Kristin, let's break each one of them down in the community. More interaction, guys. If you're live on this call, ask a question, share a takeaway.
Yeah, and one thing, I interviewed a couple different home buyers. One, Jackie, I had interviewed her, and she said that she went with her loan officer because he was providing a lot of advice and feedback to all of her questions. She actually had interviewed and looked at other loan officers, found a lower rate, and ended up going with this loan officer because he would respond to all of her questions. So again, just emphasizes that point. And then again, on the channel perspective, I interviewed another woman, Carly, who all of these are on YouTube too, if you want to look at them. But she said that if she had a horrible home buying experience actually, but one of the things that I kept hearing over and over was this channel issue around communication. She said that her loan officer would call her so many times throughout the day and it'd be looking for another document or something else, and she was like, I'm working all day. Like, why couldn't you text me this question? I could respond easily if you texted me that, and I could send you what you needed if you were texting me. Obviously, I'm a huge proponent of using a POS and, using it more, like a lot easier ways for someone to know what they're missing and how to upload their documents. But at a bare minimum, know when the right time is to text and when the right time is to call. And you can text for a call. I prefer if someone would, actually when I was selling my home, I put my home on Zillow. And so I had, a million realtors calling me, and I never picked up the phone and I never do pick up the phone when a stranger, like a random number's calling me. But I had a couple realtors text me and I responded right away. And one of them said, "Are you free for a call now?" And I was like, "Sure." But that got me to the phone call. So anyway, I just want to emphasize that point around communication. But moving into the next one, did I talk about choice yet?
Yeah, talk about choice from I talked about mortgage options, but I want to talk about choice because I'm sure there's other ways that we can give choice. And guys, after Kristin talks about this, if you have things that you're doing, let us know down below. Go ahead, Kristin.
So choice is obvious when you're thinking about showing different mortgage scenarios and that kind of thing. But the choice is also about just having a clear understanding of your options and what's being shared with you. So even things from looking at disclosures and negotiation offers, anything that is related to, and you might even think about this from a larger perspective, not just the home buying process, but if you are going to be known as someone who is really about financial wellness, then understand how to talk about, the difference between investing in the stock market and investing in real estate, and be able to communicate what the pros and cons are on a regular basis, and not always pushing for buying a home. Buying a home right now is a really good idea and probably the best thing for anyone. But I think being able to talk through these different options, it provides the consumer with a sense of choice and allows them to feel more that safety. But also providing, when you send over disclosures, send a video with that says, "Hey, I just want to walk through this with you," and you're explaining that kind of thing. I think that's helpful when it comes to choice. But and I think, we already talked about this, but just showing product options, showing the difference between if they put 5 and 10% down, or all of that is, you don't want to overwhelm them with options, but really that advice factor is critical here.
So let me talk about a choice that I see loan officers making, and you've seen the rise of the POS. And to me, the POS is rocket. It's the industry's rocket mortgage. So the rocket went off, told millennials to push a button and you get a mortgage. And then everybody has armed up with a point of sale. So when I interview top producers, and I interviewed Jay Kroll in Seattle, who took $40 million in loans last year, or not last year, last month, and did like 180 million last year. So he's one of America's best loan officers. And I asked him, what percentage of your borrowers and families are self-filling out? He calls it the mortgage questionnaire or the loan questionnaire, but it's, yeah, the digital questionnaire is like, oh, 100%. When I asked Jeremy Forcier in Petaluma, hey, what percentage of your families are, filling it out? Oh, 90%. And there are some people that don't want to do it, and we'll get on the phone and we'll do it for them. Here's another thing. I interview C-suite executives all the time, and I sell to them and I support them. And I talk to a very big platform, over 500 loan officers. If 50% of their loan officers aren't even using the digital app, and 50% are using it, and when that 50% are using it, 70% of their clients are getting the digital app. Guys, here is a choice that families want. Most families now, they know how to fill out apps online. Heck, when you go to doctor's appointments, like if a doctor gives me the old school chalkboard with a piece of paper that I have to write on, I'm pissed. Like I don't have good writing skills. I don't like it. When I walk in and they give me an iPad, I'm like, right on. That's bitching. Like I'm pumped. I'm pissed if they give me a chalkboard. So guys, here's a choice. If you're on this call right now and your company has a POS and you're like, oh, my families don't want that. No, that's you. You're projecting. At least 50% of your families want that. Probably 70 to 80% of your families want that. And so the industry is, armed up to where we have a digital point of sale platform. If you're a loan officer on this call and you are not being super smart, and here's the way I want you to define if you're super smart about this or not. If you ask yourself, what percent of my families are filling out the digital app? And if it's above 80 to 90%, you're super smart. If it's below that, sorry, you again, challenge me, put comments down below. I know top producers in Mississippi. I know top producers in every market of the country. And I'll bet you there are markets where it's less than others, but it's time for loan officers to start providing leadership. This is how you do business with me. It's an email with a link or it's a text with a link. And that's how the family does business with you. And anything less than that, you're not giving people the right choice and you're not giving people the right leadership in how you give them that choice. So Kristin, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that, we have to think about the lens your customer is coming to you with, and they are going to feel that for a lot of people, starting in an app is safer for them. Like, and that's what you were just talking about, how you feel going to the doctor's office or whatever. Like, I don't think, and it's collaborative. That's our next principle here. If you're going to truly collaborate with your customer, then you need to be able to collaborate on not just your terms, but also their terms. Think about, what's going to make them feel safest. And so for a lot of millennials or anyone, we're going to feel like it's safer for us to connect our bank account through an app and be able to start in something digital that makes it from my mobile device. And then, and then we can have a conversation. But I think it doesn't mean that we want everything to be, it doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you. I absolutely do. But I think starting there, that's a more collaborative approach to me. So, and that's why, I talked about in the article I wrote right after this about the importance of, personalization of data, but also on-demand support. And that on-demand support is what I love about, I have Oscar Health Insurance, and they have an app that you can, write in any questions, they respond quickly, you can see everything that's in your chart, and it's just a very transparent and on-demand experience. And I think that to me feels very collaborative. And so again, yeah, I think the POS and tools like that are really, really critical to providing that sense of safety and collaboration and really apply to all the principles. But under collaboration, providing, oh yeah.
Before you go off choice, I want to make sure I hit one other just tactical thing. So, one of America's top, Latino loan officers uses Mortgage Coach, and he uses it not for the sales advantage. He uses it because he says, you know what, I'll have one family member that is in my office and is downloading the app and wants this full digital experience. And I'll have another family member that will drive 30 minutes to come get a piece of paper. And so it's choice of how people want to consume content. So I'm advocating to make sure you give them the digital choice at the point of sale and at the app, but that same choice applies to the checklist. Stratmore's got a lot of data on one of the biggest killers of 5-star reviews and customer satisfaction is the checklist. Like when you take their app and you're missing things, do you give that to them in a PDF? Do you give that to them in a way that's tailored? It's in natural language. Does it sound like banking language, or does it sound like I'm a human communicating to a human? And is it multi-channel? So your checklist and your I think we call it needs list. Your needs list matters. How you take the app matters. How you deliver options matters. The channels matter. So I wanted, before we get off choices, I wanted to finish that rant and then keep it going. Your turn.
No, that's really good. I kind of want to at some point walk through each of those so maybe we can create more content around this. But yeah, because I think a lot of the behavior, like these kinds of categories, apply to all the principles that we're talking about: the channel, the communication channel, the way that you are providing the needs list, all of that. So one more thing on the collaboration is the on-demand support, providing quick responses to questions. If someone as an anxious consumer, which we're all pretty anxious consumers today because we expect to have quick responses to questions. In every other purchasing experience, we are seeing exactly what's happening in the transaction, and you can ask for any kind of Q&A support at any time. Do a chat thing with any other purchase. And so when you go to make the biggest purchase of your life, if you don't have that, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. And it might even be subconscious. I know this is a very different experience. I know this is a different kind of purchase, but I'm accustomed to this certain kind of customer experience. And so just being aware of that, providing a quick response as soon as possible, especially early in the process. And but obviously don't text your customers when you're with another customer, but take a break and respond to your questions really quick, or just say, hey, I'm going to give you a call later, something that just touches base. And I think that's really, really important. So I'll go into the last principle here, if that's cool, Dave. Also, you're frozen for me, so I hope everyone can still hear me.
I'm not frozen.
Okay.
I am just turning off my my video. So do the last one, and then I got a few thoughts I want to make sure I connect the dots on.
Okay, cool. Okay, the last one is empowerment. This is my favorite. It is really kind of sums it all together, brings it all together. So the empowerment piece is the recognition of the consumer's ability to self-advocate and achieve long-term financial wellness. And so this is about, giving the consumer, empowering the consumer with information, resources, and helping them understand how this piece of the puzzle fits into their overall empowered lifestyle that is financial wellness. And so, provide opportunities for the customer to share feedback and to really, provide them with shareable resources as well. And this is where I think that giving the consumer information, but guidance and giving them a voice through this process is really important. Okay, so that.
All right. So couple things, and then I'm gonna close out. I want to play a video that Josh Metal, when he meets with a family, he talks to them, and how he, gets them to go through the process. I want to hear it because I really think what he's doing and how he's doing it is just like, this is the playbook, guys. Before I do that, I do want to call out, one of the ways that we show leadership with collaboration is our Facebook group. And one of the reasons why I make our Facebook group such a priority and why I make these Friday masterminds such a priority is collaboration. It's to help a community of like-minded mortgage professionals that all line up around this concept of, I want advice to be a competitive advantage. I want technology to be a competitive advantage. And I want leadership. I want to, how I am as a leader, I want to bring leadership to the families I serve. And that's what Mortgage Coach is all about. That's why we have a YouTube channel. That's why we put a lot of love and time into our Facebook group. So I bring that to you, but now I want to bring that back to you. What are you doing to bring collaboration to the realtors that you serve? What are you doing to bring collaboration to the families that you do? So I've seen a lot of realtors that are getting their own Facebook communities. I'm seeing a lot of top producing loan officers that are having their own Facebook group for realtors. And so I would just push everybody in the mortgage space, like, how can you bring that? And Kristin, brought some points like mobile app, and I'm going to close out with what I think is a really bitchin' strategy around that. But I just want you to know, what are you doing? That's what Mortgage Coach is doing. The fact that Kristin's on this interview, it's one of the things that she's doing. But what are you doing to bring and create this collaboration using technology like social media, using video, and things outside that? What are you doing? So Kristin, anything you want to add on that? And then I'm going to switch devices really quick while you're talking. So, don't call me out when I'm changing devices.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think just to summarize the 5 principles, which all really overlap and play into each other, are